So today's lesson focuses on a verse of the Torah. A lot of times it's more a lesson that has a verse in the Torah portion as a launching point. This is actually focused on a verse in the Torah, but it's the interpretation of the verse, which is always subject to different opinion, but the interpretation of the verse that we have from Rashi, which is to consider always the cleanest and most simple, is it relates to how we connect with God, how we see God in our lives, and how we see life itself. So I want to bring this up, and I had to play a lot with the order of the. I felt I had to play a lot with the order of the thing, so bear with me if you're looking in the book. Okay. No, what's this? Okay. This is from the Torah portion, text 1a. Moses is talking to the Jews. He knows he's about to pass away. He knows they're about to go into Israel. And he tells them, when you come to the land which the Lord your God has given you, you should not learn to do like the abominations of those nations. In other words, don't imitate the Canaanites and their idolatry and their cults. There must not be found among you anyone that makes his sons or daughter pass through the fire. There was a very popular pagan cult called Molech, where they would, it's whether they actually killed their children going through fire or singed them, but it was something that the Torah finds abhorrent, although it was very popular. And so that's the modern ethos. Don't go there. And what the Torah seems to be saying is there will be an attraction. These were not just, if you watch an Abbott and Costello movie and people see people on some island somewhere, just natives who are really depicted as they're Neanderthals who can't think. So it's like these are idiots doing, just doing that, prancing around their ways. Torah doesn't see them as idiots. Torah sees that there was an attraction and forecast that there would be an attraction, and in that there would be, at least according to some of the commentaries, that there would be substance to their spirituality. But the Torah is strongly, Moses strongly admonishing us, and the Torah is admonishing us to stick with our brand, where the Torah tells us to put our faith. Or that uses divination, a soothsayer, an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a medium, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is an abomination to God, and because of these abominations, God is driving them out before you. And then the section ends, be tamim with God your God. Tamim is a Hebrew word. What is tamim? It's telling us to be tamim. So tamim is a word that's actually found a lot in the Torah. It's usually found with regard to the offerings. And if you look at on page 108, text 3c, I'll be here. Here's one example. You're bringing a lamb as an offering. Your lamb shall be tamim. A male of the first year should take it from sheep or from the goat. So it's very clear from the Torah that tamim, because it means in the Hebrew also, tamim means whole. So it means unblemished. That a blemished animal was not used for an offering. In that sense, we find tamim used on humankind, and 3a, which is on 107 at the bottom. When we're introduced to Noah, we say these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, and tamim in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Tamim means he was unblemished. He was good. You look at what his generation was doing, and he didn't have those imperfections. Obviously, no one's perfect, but he was saying he was whole. He did not have the imperfections that the rest of his generation had. Similarly, 3b, which is the next page, when it comes to Abraham, it says, when Abraham was 99 years old, God appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am the Almighty God, walk before me and be tamim. And what is God seeming to tell him there? Same thing like was by Noah. I'm giving you a path of life, and I want you to be wholesome. I want you to be wholesomely committed, and I want you to live a life of integrity, unblemished. So in that sense, you could say that after all of these, when God says, don't go after the different types of alien spirituality, it says, be tamim with God you got. Be wholesome. So but be wholesome is a general statement. But that section seems to be talking about specifically dealing with alien spiritualities, about where your head is, where your heart is, where your faith is. So Rashi, on the verse in this week's Torah portion, interprets tamim differently. Although this is also an acceptable translation in the Torah, which I'll show you. He says, walk with God with sincerity and depend on him, and do not delve into the future. What does that mean? The Torah was talking about not going through different alien spiritualities. I remember years ago, someone who has since passed on, who used to come Sunday mornings, very intelligent man, certainly not a spiritual, flaky spiritual type, but he was going through things in life. And it was the only time he came to my house, actually. He knocked on my door and he asked me if we could speak. And of course, and he said that I have a feeling you're not going to be happy, but I have been seeing I don't know, one of these like Madame Zelda, the tarot cards, those types of things. And this is a guy, literally, he had 5 PhDs, I think. I mean, he's very bright and very grounded and not religious, apparently religious in anything. But he was going through something. And he said, I'm shaken at how much she knew about me that she couldn't have known. And we spoke about it. Now, to me, if I meet a stranger, I can't tell them what they wrote on their shopping list that morning to go buy in ShopRite. This lady was able to tell. So I go, or different things about their life. I can't do that. Do I believe some people can? Yeah, I think some people are born with extra special sensitivity. Do I believe that therefore those are people I should be consulting? Not necessarily at all. Because the Torah tells me, don't go to look for soothsayers. What does the Torah says? Tells us be tamim. And what Rashi is saying is rely on God. Don't overcomplicate your life. You're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. Prepare, be responsible, and feel protected by God. Don't in your mind, be overly sophisticated that you're going to be able to put all the pieces together, even while it's beyond your control. Trust God, and that's what Rashi is saying. That he said at the end of this whole thing of going to different spiritualities, walk with God in sincerity and depend on Him. Do not delve into the future. In other words, in a way, it's the exact opposite of wholeness. Wholeness means I've got it all covered, and I may have it all covered, but I trust God. Rather, accept whatever happens to you with sincerity, and then you'll be with Him and become His portion. Recognize that you're one with God. Remember, someone I heard from someone about some college professor who came out of meeting the Rebbe, and he said it's amazing. The man has the intellect of a genius and the faith of a child. It's just he believes in God. God's with him. God's taking care of him. Doesn't mean it's not a contradiction to being brilliant. But the idea is trying to to arrange things that I should trust someone's taking care of. If I trust, and this is not at all obviously because there's no good example for God, but if I'm going to a procedure, God forbid, a medical procedure with a doctor I trust, to ask about, do you have all your scalpels? Do you have everything? If you don't trust me, you don't trust me. You put your trust somewhere. We, much more than we do in a surgeon, we trust God. We should be trusting God. And therefore, what Rashi's saying is, tamim in this sense means a certain sense of simplicity, not simple-minded, but to fall into God's arms, to be able to trust God.
But isn't this accept? It's about acceptance, but isn't it about faith?
It's about faith. Well, it's about faith, but there are two words that sometimes get confused: faith and trust. I can believe in God and not trust that my day is going to go well, because God's God, but I got my day to deal with. I trust my engineer, my lawyer. Certainly, if I trust God, it's not only I believe my lawyer exists or my engineer exists. I trust that I'm going to get from A to B because I have a good engineer. I have a good lawyer. Now, sometimes humans, there's only so much you can trust. With God, what the Torah wants us to do is not only believe in God, but to have the trust that we'll be taken care of. Now, sometimes my mind is telling me, oh, I don't think this is going to end up well. And if my mind is telling me that, I have to listen to what my mind is saying. Okay, so what can I do to guide things so they do end up well? That's my human responsibility. But once I've done that, God says, now trust me. But trust me so that you really trust me. Don't go jumping into other things to drive out to Madame Zelda. Because then what you're saying is that within the Torah program, that's not enough to keep me calm. I'm not criticizing that guy. I get it. But the point is that there's this idea of achieving a certain level of surrender and comfort with God, where we're, even on a day when we're not sure about how this is going to end up, we feel calm because we're not alone. The worry comes from from an insecurity. What Torah is saying is, if you're in God's embrace, how can you be insecure? Now, of course, we don't feel like we're in God's embrace. It is developmentally and it's humanly normal for us to feel insecure. And Torah is saying is, use your mind and your faith to bring you to a place where you don't feel insecure, because you really believe that God is with you and taking care of you and holding you up and leading you. And this interpretation is found in the Torah also of tamim. Like I said, that's the Hebrew word. Just to get past this, then we'll get into the topic. When Isaac and Rebekah had twins, they were Yaakov and Esav. Esav was these were the perennial good boy, bad boy, and the boys grew. And the Torah says Esav was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Yaakov was a sincere man dwelling in tents. What does that mean? The cunning part, well, that was not his thing. He wasn't overthinking things. And therefore, it's the same word, tamim. And the sincerity means that there is this acceptance where we don't always rely everything on our own ability to understand and to control, but we recognize that God is in control, which is not easy for people sometimes. Because we have a brain, right? We want to use it, and we should use it. And sometimes, I think, according to the Torah, we overuse it, because we should now just be trusting God.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
you yourself using the services of the Jewish wizard, the guy that helped with his eyesight, helps him.
We're talking about the Rebbe.
No, you had some other guy in Brooklyn that help with this Catholic when you have children.
Yeah.
To get pregnant, and you yourself had eye problem. You used the service of
right. So that's a good question. Someone who can see. Since that's a person who is following in the Torah's ideas, and the way that they're saying is that ultimately, and the way it's presented is ultimately, we're consistently. I think it meant the Rebbe, because in a way the Rebbe would be the same question. When the Rebbe would answer someone, and we'll have some of it now, he was able to see things we clearly were not able to see, but it was always about relying on God. That ultimately the greatest tool we have is to rely on God. And sometimes I go to someone who can see a problem that I simply can't see. It's like going to a doctor. When I go to a doctor, and the doctor says, actually, there's something you have, your whole problem is because there's something that whatever it is, there's something that's malfunctioning with you, and we can fix it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to a doctor. So I'm going to someone who has a spiritual vision to be able to see, well, that's where we're going to see, what's wrong with him with having children, or whatever it may be. But it's not looking to a different spiritual stream.
So Zelda's gift doesn't count the same as the Jewish.
If there was a Torah Zelda, I would think that maybe
everything is given to us by Hashem.
Correct.
Just as the Jewish wizard gets his gift, I'm sure Zelda God has gift from Hashem.
If you had been in synagogue yesterday, see that?
Yes.
You could have seen that the Torah depicts a scenario when the Jews go into Israel, that there's a person, a prophet, who stands up at the Jewish people, works a miracle, and then tells them to go serve a god, another god. So how could God, if he made a miracle, God enabled him to work a miracle? And now he's telling us, and the Torah is saying, don't listen to him, stick with God. In a way similar to this, but this was what we read yesterday. So the idea is a lot of life is a setup. So if there's spirituality, and we have a Jew-hating non-Jewish prophet we read about a month ago in the Torah. He's a Jew hater. How does he have spiritual power? Spiritual power is apparently out there. I'm not going to deny it. I don't think spiritual potency is only in the Jewish community. But holy spiritual potency is something else.
So Zelda would be part of the chosen people. So
No, it wouldn't be only part of the chosen people if she came from a Torah perspective. So, and here in 8b, it says, what is a sincere man? Not expert in all these things, as he said what he felt. One who is not cunning and deceiving people is called tam, sincere, simple. So it's not simple-minded, but there's a certain simplicity that, in this case, it's reliance on God. So now we're going to get to what the point is of today's discussion is the Torah, according to Rashi, is telling us that there are going to be all of these spiritually and emotionally attractive cults that seem to add to your quality of life. And the Torah says, just simply rely on God. Don't go into foreign fields. This is from this is in text 9. This is one of the great Jewish philosophers of the 11th century. And he has a whole section on trust of God. And he writes, trust is the peace of mind that comes from relying on God. It's the inner confidence that he will do what is truly good and right in the manner entrusted to him, according to his wisdom and ability. God is good, and God is able, and God's going to do the right thing. The foundation of trust, the element without which it cannot exist, is the heart's certainty that God will keep his word and fulfill what he has promised. If God is God and able, God will, let's say, will fulfill what he has promised. What he has promised, let's say, the existence of the Jewish people. I'm fully certain that that's going to happen, no matter what's going on. Now, beyond that is the belief he will also do good even in areas he hasn't promised, out of pure kindness and generosity. If God sees us each as a parent sees a child, even if I don't have any contract or a promise from God, to trust that God will take care of me. In text 10, this is from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was always promoting amongst the different things he was telling people is always to find trust in God. I have a friend whose grandfather had a very, very close relationship with the Rebbe, and he was a worrywart. And the Rebbe would consistently tell him that your worrying is getting in the way of your blessing. He was a rabbi. He was a very religious Hasidic Jew. He said, but you don't trust God enough. You just keep worrying, and the worrying is not just bad for your blood pressure. It gets in the way of your blessings. So here's a letter that the Rebbe wrote in 1950. In these lines, I would like to stress once more that every Jew, woman, or man should be strong in the trust in God. Just as every Jew believes with perfect faith that the Holy One, blessed be He, is the master of the universe, so too is He the master over the life of every individual Jew. And since it is certain that He is good, He will certainly lead things in a good direction. The Rebbe would have written this to someone who's not Jewish too, but here he was talking about within the Jewish people. When one is under God's specific supervision, so not only you believe in God, creator of the universe, you believe that God cares specifically about you under divine providence. So if I think that God cares about me, Mendy, Herson, even though I'm a speck of humanity, and I do believe that I think God cares about every one of us, there's nothing to be afraid of. As King David says in Tehillim, in Psalms, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The words for you are with me relate to every single Jew. I hope that God will clearly show you too an improvement in your situation, and that you will be able to give me good news. And this is another letter from the 1950s. One ought to know, once and for all, text 11, that faith is not something that is meant to remain only in one's thought. It must permeate the whole of one's life. And this is kind of around, I think this is a little bit, faith can be a distant thing. Trust is not. Trust means I know you, I trust you. It's a very, very central feeling. We don't trust many people. We believe a lot of people exist. We don't trust that many. You're without any doubt, the Rebbe writes, this person a believer. So the very first point of belief is that God directs the world. And if God is capable of directing 1.5 billion people in 1950, then your own affairs will certainly see the fulfillment of the verse, I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain you and deliver you. God is taking care of every one of 1.5 billion people, not just Jews, right? Everybody. And therefore, God takes care of me. Now think this over. God promises, I will sustain and deliver you. So think, can a Gentile from this or that land disturb God from fulfilling His promise? God forbid. This the writer of the letter, and we don't know who wrote the letter to the Rebbe, is obviously worrying about, some foreign affairs if someone's going to, some evil leader was going to hurt them. Having thought about that, now consider, is God really in need of your worry as to how He's going to run your affairs and solve your problems? Or will He succeed in finding good solutions even without your worry? So you've been given two options. Either A, you will walk around worried in case, God forbid, the blessing won't be fulfilled. And then when the blessing is fulfilled, you'll have a fresh worry. Why did you have to waste so much vital energy in vain? It worked out good anyway. Not because I worried. Or B, you'll be staunch in your trust and faith in God. That God will lead you along the right path and will fulfill all the blessings that you have been given. And then when you see them being fulfilled in actual fact, you'll be able to tell yourself, just look how well I handled this situation. I don't worry about things that were no cause for concern. You have nothing to worry about. You can be happy, and you can fulfill the directive of the verse, serve God with joy. Okay. So the Rebbe is trying to drive home to us is that we're all God's children, and a parent takes care of children. Now we may think that maybe, well, I haven't been such a good child. Maybe I don't deserve that kind of protection. But if we go back to that 11th century author, he says true trust means believing that God's generosity and kindness are absolute, extended not only to those who deserve, but even those who do not. God's giving is steady, His kindness continuous, never ending, and never withheld. No matter how I see myself this morning or this afternoon when I'm facing something and say, well, there's God, but does God remember me? Or would God protect me after the things I did? That's not a Jewish way of thinking. God is a parent. And if I am turning to God and saying, I need you and I trust that you're going to be there for me, that brings divine blessing. And there is a thought that would often quote. The third Lubavitcher Rebbe, also named Rabbi Mendy, said to have come one of his followers. His son was very ill, and he came to visit the Rebbe to ask for a blessing. And the Rebbe told him, in Yiddish, tracht gut wird sein gut. Think positive and don't be positive. How are you going to think positive? The doctors have a bad prognosis and diagnosis. But he went home and he said he wrestled with himself to imagine, to consider, to say, I am going to think positive that God can save my son and will save my son. And by the time when he came home, he saw his son was in good shape. And that's text 13 is think good and it will be good. Now, what does that mean? And we're going to talk about more. What the Rebbe was saying was that we live in an interactive universe. And we want to, when they put up a mezuzah, the mezuzah is a mitzvah, but a mezuzah is also a protection for the home. That's what we believe. So a mezuzah, it brings something. It's Jewish feng shui, whatever. It protects the house, it protects the rhythm of the house, it's the spirit of the house, the physical security of the house. So a mitzvah has a corollary. It triggers a certain type of blessing. Finding trust in God, that God will guide us to a good place, that also brings blessing. So there are two different lanes of trust. One is that I trust that whatever God gives me that was what it is, and if it hurts, and if it's not good, that's just what God had in mind. That's a passive trust. What that 11th century rabbi, what the Rebbe was saying and quoting him, is that you don't want to just do that. You want to find an active trust that God will be there for you. Now, if on the other side you don't see the blessing, then you say, listen, it wasn't meant to be. But the idea of trusting God. So I remember my youngest daughter, so it must be 23, 24 years ago when she was very young. She was 2, 3 years old. She fainted one day, but then she afterwards I remember we put some water on her. She was okay, so I didn't take her to a doctor. That was a little weird. And then a few weeks later, she fainted again. And then that scared me. So we went to a doctor in Morristown, a pediatric neurologist, and he said it could be that she has, God forbid, a mass in her brain, or that maybe she just has naturally a little their brainwave patterns are a little off because we took a CAT scan. So he couldn't see in it. He just saw something was off with the brainwaves. And he says, well, that would be the case. She'll outgrow it. She'll outgrow the fainting. So he set up an MRI for a few days from then, which was, so I had to live, a young parent, had to live with this uncertainty till the MRI and then the MRI results. And I remember being with Malki at night, and Malki was already, because Malki's a can-do person, she's already figuring out what we're going to do during chemo. She had it all, and I was saying, he said Scientifically, this might be just a natural, unusual brainwave pattern. Focus on that. Trust in that. It's going to be okay. Not because I want to be able to go to sleep. It's because that is having that kind of trust is a lightning rod for blessing. We'll find out what it is later. But right now, trust in God. And Baruch Hashem, it all worked out all right. I'm not saying this is why it worked out all right, but that's the type of thing. Is it just saying, well, if this is meant to be, this is what we're going to do? I would say, no, you know something? I'm not alone in the world. God, you're able. You're a parent. You can help me. I trust that it's going to be okay. That, it takes a lot of work. It's active. And that, just like putting up a mezuzah is an action that triggers blessing, the inner work of finding trust is an action that triggers blessing of God's protection. And this is also from the Rebbe. Here's what bitachon, meaning trust in God, does not mean. That God's kindness is immeasurable and unlimited, so must extend even to those who are undeserving. As such, I can receive God's kindness without any effort on my part. Doesn't mean that. If this were true, the entire concept of reward and punishment would be canceled. We are responsible for our actions. What can I do if I say, listen, this is what I did in my life, and now I'm facing something. I can't change the past. Rather, what's the key here? Finding trust, which you can control right now. Rather, bitachon, trust in God, is inner spiritual work, and is that work that triggers God's kindness. It's a result of a person's active efforts to be more trusting in God. That's what it is. It's working because we don't naturally trust God and just rely on God, because we're raised to be self-reliant. We're happy if we're self-reliant. Recognize that we can be self-reliant to a point, but then there's God, and we have to trust God and rely on God. That takes effort. Truly, it's a genuine thing, not just saying it. Deeply relying exclusively on God to the extent that one has no worries at all is sufficient cause for God to conduct himself accordingly and grant the person goodness. That is a trigger that God gives you. That what you did in the past, you worried about, you deal with that later. But now, what you're looking at, and to trust that God in a way of equanimity, and that you're not worrying about it, and you're not losing sleep, and your blood pressure is down because you trust that God's going to be okay. That is an inner work and action that draws God's blessing. The person receives kindness even if, absent that trust, they were otherwise unworthy. So that is, it's a shorter class today, but it's actually a very, very powerful lesson to think about probably every day. I think because it's not a natural thing to wake up in the morning and just rely on God. Because you can't rely on God. You have to rely on yourself. You want to be healthy, you got to eat, you got to exercise, you got to take your pills, you got to watch, be careful when you cross the street. That's all true. But then beyond that, this is the idea of recognizing that ultimately it's God, and God is good, and God is able, and God cares. And therefore, when I'm facing something today, and I've done everything I need to do to get my ducks in order, now, God, I'm trusting you, and I'm trusting in a good resolution to this. That is itself a mitzvah. And that work, this rabbi of the 11th century writes, that itself is a trigger to draw the blessing we need. All right. A little more time to enjoy a beautiful day.
That's a good idea. Winter is coming.